And welcome to the Talking Archive. My name is Josh Jacobs, and it's a privilege to have with us today Dale Berg. He's been in Los Angeles radio as well as radio in the Coachella Valley. And Dale, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah.
Well, tell us about your childhood and what inspired you to get into the wonderful world of radio.
Well, it all started when I was probably about 7. I saw a radio station for the first time, and I was just intrigued. And it was interesting, too, because as a kid, I actually thought there was a man on the radio. And I kept telling my dad, where's the man on the radio? And I couldn't find the man, so I put little man in there. Yeah, at the age of 9 years old, I really got the bug. So my dad, he got me a microphone. It was a crystal microphone for Christmas. And he surprised me because he was able to tie that in using the amplifier of an AM radio. And so all I had to do was flip a little switch and tune to a blank spot on the radio, and my voice would come through the speaker. And then I had just a little regular kids record player. And so I'd play records and I'd pretend like I was on the radio. When I was 14, a friend of mine told me that he was going to buy a wireless microphone from Radio Shack. It was called the Apollo FM90. And so I decided, well, I would like to get one of those. He never got one, but I did. But the version that I got was the second version, and because his would have had a line-in plug on it, but this one didn't. But I got around that. Mm-hmm. And so I started broadcasting to the neighborhood. And different equipment and things like that along the way. And it was a lot of fun. And in fact, I had some listeners.
Wow.
And I'd be walking outside with my radio to see how far it was getting out. And one time this guy pulled me aside and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm listening to my radio station." And he didn't believe me. And he says, "Well, I'll tell you what. I've got a 45 that I want you to play, and I'll believe you if you're able to play this." And I said, "Okay." And it was, "They're coming to take me away, haha." So I played it, and I came back over to his house, and we just sat there and talked for probably about a half hour or so about my endeavors in the radio. So that's basically how I got started, and I just got the bug. What can I tell you?
Napoleon the 14th was, I think, the artist that did that tune back in the 1960s. And now, what was the 94.3 in Orange County? I remember for years it was Kick FM and eventually Super Cool. What was the call letters back when you were a kid?
Well, it was KTBT 94.3, and they were an underground rock station. That worked out pretty well, but the story that I got was that eventually the jocks were having underage girls in there, and so the owner decided to flip the format to kind of a religious talk station. Mm-hmm. And then eventually the station moved to the city in Orange and became KORJ, which was like Kate Orange. Mm-hmm. And they played kind of a soft rock AC format. And it really didn't sound great. I mean, I mean, what kind of equipment they were using. And then eventually, in 1980, the station turned over and began their Kick FM station, which, of course, became a very big station in Orange County for many years.
Yeah, I remember it very well. In fact, Charlie Tune was morning man there for about 2 years in the mid-'90s after having been on Cam PC as the sports talk station. After that went to News Talk. By the way, how many hours a day did you broadcast from your little radio station, your FM station, about within a 2-mile radius of your house?
Well, I broadcasted for about 2 hours in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. I'd get out of school, and I would just spend like a couple of hours and be playing some music and that sort of thing. And as far as getting out 2 miles, that was by just doing things that I really had no idea what I was doing. Like, for instance, I thought about the antenna, and I thought, well, if I connected to a resistor, it might get out further. So I did, and it did. And I was doing that kind of radio station up until, the early 80s. And so this was from 1972 to about 1982. And what happened was I ran into a guy who told me that what I could do is I could take a TV antenna amplifier and put it in reverse. And so I did that, and when I did that, the signal, of course, went everywhere. And where I lived, it was in Anaheim, Ball and Magnolia, and I could hear the station almost to Disneyland.
Wow.
So it had a pretty good signal. And then also I managed to put up a CB antenna on top of the house and got even greater range at that point. Yeah.
Now, in your early years, did you ever do any internships with radio stations before you had your first paying gig in radio?
Well, I wouldn't say that I did an internship. What happened with me was I decided I'm just going to go for it, and I'm just going to go to a radio station, and I'm going to apply. I'm going to tell them that I have absolutely no experience and see what happens. I didn't even know anything about internships. When I got out of high school, the first thing I did was I went to Fullerton College, and I took their class to be able to get my third-class FCC license. And I failed the first semester, so I had to take the class over again because I just couldn't pass the element 9. So I finally did that, and in November of 1977, I drove to Long Beach, California, and I drove to this radio station that originally was 1280 KFOX, AM radio station, played country and western music. They were located at 666 Ocean Boulevard in this international tower. I went up there, and the station had flipped to a religious format. They were now known as family radio. And I met some really interesting people there, just down-to-earth people they just didn't even look like what I would consider radio people. And I met with the general manager, and he asked me some questions, and he told me he didn't have any openings at the time, but he would keep my resume and my application on hand. And I said, okay, that's fine. And so I would periodically call him. And in May of 1978, he said he had an opening. By this time, they had moved to a storefront building on First and Linden in Long Beach. And so I went there, and I sat down with him, and he said he had this Saturday shift from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., and he would like to give it to me. What he wanted me to do was he wanted me to come in during the week and kind of train to learn how to do things. And also he wanted me to record my newscast, the newscast that I would be doing, which would be at 8:55 in the morning. And so I said, okay, great. And I came in there and I was record my newscast, and they'd play it, and all of that. There was one day that it just wasn't working for me. The taping of my newscast, I just kept making mistakes and stuff. So rather than telling the lady who was normally doing that shift, hey, I messed up with the newscast, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it, and have her do the newscast, I got this brainy idea, hey, go on the air live. Okay? So sure enough, I hit the music for the news and everything, opened the mic, and I started doing my newscast. And about halfway through, I realized what I was doing. But, oh, my goodness, I'm on the radio. And so I kind of stumbled a little bit. My dad happened to be at the Veterans Hospital, and he was listening, and he said, well, you stumbled a little bit, but you picked it up fine. Well, I had in the back of my mind that this general manager was pacing the floor, and I was absolutely totally right.
Mm-hmm.
And he just really gave it to me. And he says, you are not going to get this shift. You're not good enough. You can't read, la-di-da-di-da, and, about ready to send me up the road. But he said, but if you'd like to, you can come in here and you can practice doing the news. I can't pay you, but you can come in here and do that. And he says, I would suggest that you go take some courses in college and things like that. So, I took an announcing class, and I took a studio operations class and that sort of thing. And I kept coming in periodically, about once or twice a week. And I would just prepare a newscast, put it on tape, play it for the production director, who happened to be the lady that was doing the morning show. And she would listen to that, and she would say to me, hey, this sounds really good. And then I would be like going on thinking, I'm doing better. I'm really doing better. And so he realized, the general manager realized that I was doing better. So he decided to give me a shift, which was on Monday evenings. And I could do the newscast, but I had to record. And so I did that, and I recorded the newscast and stuff. And I just kept getting better and better until finally he gave me a few shifts during the week. I actually got the Saturday shift. I actually got the shift that I originally was going to be hired for, because the guy that had replaced me fell asleep. And it was really funny because, I was doing the overnight shift, and he says, hi, how you doing? Oh, fine. Well, they had this sofa that was in the room. He lay down on the sofa, and he fell asleep.
Oh, no.
And the thing about it was that if you fell asleep, you were fired. No questions, because he slept through a tape change. And it was on a Saturday morning, and they had a bunch of kids' shows that they were playing on the radio. And, of course, the general manager's kids were listening to the radio, and so he's hearing about 15 minutes of dead air. And so I ended up getting that shift, and then also I did some overnight shifts. And it was kind of an interesting thing because all of the work started around 4 o'clock in the morning, when I would be doing marathon newscasts at 8 o'clock. And that was doing really well. And then they eventually put me on in the afternoons, and I was doing the afternoon drive time news. And one newscast was actually 20 minutes, and I was able to do the newscast with one of the girls who was a board operator there. And I was basically just considered a board operator. It was not, a disc jockey or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this lasted, I was there for 2 years.
Wow.
And then I realized, I want to spin records. That's what I got into this business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went out to this radio station in San Bernardino, California, KQLH 95.1, which is now KPRO. And I had sent my tape and resume there, and I received a call from the program director, and he wanted to meet with me, and he hired me. And the thing that was kind of funny is that he hired me for whopping money of $4 an hour. And I'd been making $3.50 an hour at the station in Long Beach. And so my boss came up to me there and says, I'm going to give you a raise to $4 an hour if you stay here. I said, no, I want to do that. And so I left, and I went to work out in San Bernardino. At that point, I became assistant production manager, also assistant music director, and that gig lasted for about a year until there was a format change.
Wow, and that's what was the format of KQLH, by the way?
The format was a very interesting one. It was 75% secular, 25% Christian.
Wow.
So really, and it was album-oriented rock. I mean, this was not like top 40 or anything like that. I mean, we were playing Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, the whole thing, Robin Trower, and at the same time, we're playing Phil Keaggy, and we're playing Amy Grant and
Daniel Amos?
And Daniel Amos, yes. And the thing that was cool about the station was that it played the Christian music that KYNS in Santa Ana would not touch. For instance, we played the Resurrection Band, we played Barnabas, we played all of the more heavier type records. So I was like in heaven because I'm sitting there doing a shift and I'm playing this stuff, including Supertramp, and also I'm playing the Bee Gees, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, man, I just landed in heaven. I mean, I'm just, you know, and things worked out so well for me there. I started off doing a little overnight shift, and then they moved me to middays, and then eventually, well, actually evenings first, and then middays. And there was one incident that happened. We were playing records back then. There was, I mean, we had some cart machines where you could play some carts, and some of the songs were in carts, but they only had one good cart player. The other one was just like, okay, for commercials and things. But we were spinning records, and so what happened this one day? I was doing the midday show, and I did a perfect talk up to the, you know, with the intro of the song, right, and hit the vocal. I mean, it was just awesome and everything. And then I turned the record off. I turned the turntable off.
Oh, no.
And so all of a sudden you're hearing this, you know, and then I turned it back on. And so I start yelling, you know, to the top of my lungs, I turned the record off. Oh, man, I'm so stupid. You know, I turned the record off. And the phone, the intercom buzzed, and I answered it, and the girl at the front desk says, "You're on the radio."
Oh, no.
I forgot to turn my mic off. And I thought, okay, that's it for me. I'm done. I'm going to be fired and all this. The program director comes in, and he is just laughing. You know, he's just busting up laughing. But what had happened was the management decided to leave the radio station and buy a radio station in Florida. And so what happened was that the radio station was owned by World Scope Ministries, and it was headed by, I think of the guy's name. But anyway, the thing about it is that the owner of the station brought in Pat Michaels, who was the general manager of Quiz AM and FM for many years. And so he came in there, and it was really kind of funny because most of the people that were working for the radio station realized that we were owned by a Christian company, and we did play some Christian music and things like that. But there were some people there that they didn't know that. They had no clue. And so we had to go to a mandatory staff meeting in the restroom. And this is where we were going to be introduced to Pat. And so, okay, it was William J. Roberts. He gets up there and he starts preaching. And he's preaching an hellfire and damnation message. And this girl who was across from me is an atheist. And she had no clue as to what in the world. Her and her husband are sitting there like, what is this? You know. And so I had to explain to her the next week where she was working and who she was working for, because she had no clue. But we were introduced to Pat Michaels, and he decided he wanted to change the format abruptly, and he wanted to do this loving and gentle radio station format, which played Perry Como and Tom Jones and all those different people. And about the heaviest thing that we would be playing would be Dan Fogelberg. I mean, it was just one of those things. And so the program director was given the task to pull the music. He had to pull the music.
Mm-hmm.
And he was going for the music, and he would say, "Oh, I didn't see that one. I didn't see that one." And he would just let it stay.
Mm.
Well, the girl we had, who was Patty Peach, who went on to work for many different radio stations, including KCBS-FM in Los Angeles when they were Aero 93.
Oh, yeah.
She, we knew, passed the song up, but she didn't. She'd play it. And so Pat's coming into work, and she's playing this song by this group, and it's just a complete total rock song. And it was bad to me. And they had come out with a brand new album after all these years. And she was playing this song called Hold On. And I mean, that was real. I mean, it was really rocking. Mm-hmm. And he almost drove off the 91 freeway. He was just, so he was just extremely angry. He came in, he fired the program director and also fired me. Mm. And so at that point, I moved on to a little radio station in Riverside, 80 watts, called KHNY, KHNY 92.7. And it was more of a top 40 station. And I went to work there and didn't realize that I was working for Alumatech, who was the general manager. And so he would listen to everything I would say on the radio. If I didn't do something perfect, he would run down the hall, open the door of the control room, and start cussing me out. Mm. And that lasted probably about 5 or 6 weeks. And the rating book came out, and they dropped in the ratings, and he thought that they were going to be having to cut back on their sales or whatever. And so he said, the only thing I can do is go to 6-hour air shifts. And so you're the last person I hired, you're the first person I'm firing. And so he sent me through. And it just goes from there. I don't know how far you want me to go, but...
This is the Talking Archive. My name is Josh Jacobs. We're talking with Dale Berg, talking about his early years in radio. And later on, you did go to one of the premier Christian, sometimes it was adult contemporary, sometimes it was Hot AC, sometimes CHR, depending on the year and the management. We're going to be talking about that station next time, so be with us then.